Hey, welcome back to the Going Disparate podcast with Pam and Mara. I am your host, Pam Rogers.
And I'm Mara Dolan. We are so happy that you joined us here. We loved our conversation with New Hampshire Dems Chair Ray Buckley. If you haven't heard it, check it out. Today, we are talking with Evan Falchuk, a man who started his own political party, the United Independent Party, ran for governor of Massachusetts, didn't win, and did something very unusual. He decided that third parties weren't the way to go, and he is now a registered Democrat and speaking out against third parties. So I'm really looking forward to hearing what he has to say, particularly in light of the fact that No Labels is planning to run a third party candidate for president this year.
You know, it is an interesting topic, Mara, and I admittedly know almost nothing about third parties and running.
Most people don't. Right.
I know here in New Hampshire we have free staters, but I don't know if that's an actual party. I'm not sure. I'm totally interested to hear what he has to say, because it's interesting that someone who worked so hard to establish a party then sort of like abandons it to join another party. So it is really interesting to hear what he has to say about it.
Well, particularly since this is not something that I've seen before. What you usually see are people who run on either the Republican or the Democratic ticket, don't do well, and blame their party. And then they start running as a third party candidate. And it doesn't work because it never does.
Right. Exactly. It never does. Like party jumpers, it never really works out for sure.
Right.
Yeah. And our conversation with Ray Buckley, chairman of the New Hampshire Democratic Party, was literally amazing. Like left me.
I know. First of all, he's incredibly smart and insightful in what he had to say about New Hampshire and what they're doing to adapt to what's happened to the DNC not wanting New Hampshire to be the first in the nation primary was really interesting, but also his personal experiences were just profoundly moving. I really strongly urge folks to find that. And actually, just to let you know, we are on so many platforms. I have to read from a list. We want you to subscribe. Also, go to our website, goingdisparate.com, and sign up for updates. And you can find the links to our podcast there. But you can also find us on Spotify, iTunes, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Castbox, Stitcher, and we're also on YouTube if you want to watch us. And while you're subscribing, we hope you'll post a review and give us a nice 5-star rating. That'll help other folks find our podcast as well.
Yeah, that would be amazing. And before we speak to Evan, I would like to play a little game with you that I like to play in court.
Oh my.
Incredibly bored waiting for my cases to be called. And just in case you don't know, you and I are the type of lawyer that go to court every single day of our lives.
Yes.
And you just, a lot of times you're sitting there just waiting for your case.
Yes.
So I called this the top 3.
Uh-oh.
And I would like to know, who is your favorite serial killer?
Oh, God.
And I don't mean favorite like you're like, oh, I'm so excited they murdered people. I just mean like the story and the background and the trial.
Well, I don't know what defines a serial killer. If you killed 2 people at the same time, does that make you a serial killer? Because I would say Lizzie Borden. I am fascinated by that case.
You know what? Tell me a little bit more about that. I don't know if she qualifies as a serial killer, but she is. Let's talk about her.
Well, she was found not guilty after trial. But the evidence was pretty incredible. I read a big long book about it years ago. I wish I could remember all the details, but it was pretty overwhelming. They certainly found the bodies. There was some evidence that she had burned the dress that she was wearing. They found the axe. There was a history of discord with the stepmother. You know, that's a common dynamic, that when one parent is gone for whatever reason and the remaining parent remarries, the stepchildren aren't always happy with the step parent. Sometimes they are in their wonderful relationships, but clearly that was not the case. But the theory is that the reason that she was found not guilty is that the Bordens were an established so-called good family in Fall River, and she was a woman. And so I think it was, the theory is it was partly privilege, but also partly that the jurors just had a hard time believing that someone like that would have committed 2 axe murders.
Right. Yeah. Really, really interesting. And I think,
who's your favorite serial killer?
Oh my gosh, I'm obsessed with Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Like the manifesto and the whole story about the manifesto just draws me in. But like I've read every book. Yeah. I have watched every crime show about it, and I'm just fascinated by his thinking and the way he lived. And obviously he was a horrible person, so I'm not saying he's a good person. I'm just saying it's just a fascinating story.
You know, I'm reminded, because I'm thinking now about the criminal mind, and as criminal defense attorneys, we have a lot of familiarity with what they call the criminal mind. And I remember when I was first practicing, a very experienced criminal lawyer said to me, most of the people you're going to see are people who have had messed up lives and they're having a messed up moment. There is evil, but it's rare. And that's been my experience. That is most of what I see. But I have occasionally seen, not necessarily my clients, but I've been in court when folks were appearing before the judge who were a different league.
Yeah, totally agree with you. All right, second question.
Yes.
What is your favorite cult?
My favorite cult?
Yes. Like if you're going to run away and join a cult.
I would never do. I don't know, Pam. I don't think I would ever run away. Why? Do you have a favorite cult?
Heaven's Gate. You know,
the
suicide in their track suits and their Nikes, and they had the little patch on the side that said the away team. That's
I guess Jim Jones, because that's where we get, you know, maybe the cliche, but drinking the Kool-Aid.
Right.
That he got people to kill themselves.
Yeah.
And it is incredible to think that someone would have that. First of all, that someone would want to do that, but that someone would have the capacity to do that. And I don't know how he did it or why.
I know. There's a lot of like cult experts out there that I've heard on podcasts.
We need to get one on.
We really should, because it's really like fascinating stuff, because Heaven's Gate to me is really just fascinating. And they left behind so much digital productions. They were constantly talking to cameras and I mean, it was a really interesting, obviously horrendously sad case. And I'm very sorry that people are
horrible.
My third question is always like, what's your favorite crime story? Like what story always drags you in that you could watch every true crime story about?
The Lindbergh kidnapping.
That's a good one, Mara.
Thank you. Yeah. A terrible tragedy. There have been some, I think, credible issues raised as to whether the right person was convicted, the way that it was done, and why Charles Lindbergh was targeted. And I think what that means, Charles Lindbergh, of course, as we know, turned out not to be a perfect person. He was a Nazi sympathizer. But what that says about the vulnerability of people who achieve great success. So I would add to that the murder of John Lennon.
Oh, yeah. Right.
I mean, and what many folks don't know, though they know that George Harrison was stabbed, but a lot of folks don't know, is that he was stabbed 40 times and he almost died. So think about the Beatles and how extraordinarily successful they were. And their message was one of love. One of them was murdered and another one was almost murdered. What does that say about how our world responds to people who, like the Beatles and Charles Lindbergh, have extraordinary achievement that really elevates us?
Right.
That, you know, so.
I have two favorite crime stories, and my husband John is always like, if he comes home and I'm watching anything about these two topics, he's like, I'm leaving. I can't. Right?
Yeah.
But the first one is D.B. Cooper.
Oh.
Only successful airplane hijacking in the history of our country. And because of like the time period, they say he's got to be dead today, whoever he was.
Yeah.
Because I think he was well into his 80s, they would think. But it's fascinating because there are so many true crime shows out there about it. And they're like, was it this person? Was it that person? And every time I watch them and they're like, here's, suspect number one, I'm like, he did it. It's him. And then they're like, here's suspect number two. And I'm like, oh no, he did it. Right. So it's like, there's so many viable suspects out there and it's fascinating. And it's unfortunately never going to be solved, but I love it. The second story that I love is the Aaron Hernandez, New England Patriot tight end / serial killer.
That was incredible.
That was insane, because I think as residents of New England, like, we watched it. So he was like, perp walked out of his house. And I mean, it was incredible to think that someone that on Sundays we cheer for.
I know. He was a hero. He was a sports hero, and he was a local boy, you know?
Yeah. How do you throw it all away?
Well, there was evidence after did he kill himself in prison? He did. He committed suicide in prison. There was substantial evidence of brain injury after he passed. So that raises the question as to how much in control of his thoughts and actions he was. Who knows, Pam? He might not have been criminally responsible.
Yeah, he may not have been, and unfortunately we'll never know. But there's that institute at Harvard, I don't know what it's called, but they do study CTE, and that was an issue that was raised, I think, after his passing. And he was found not guilty of the double murder in the second trial.
Yes, that's right.
Nightclub. But then he shot his friend. I mean, he was a very, very bad person. I mean, really bad.
All right, Pam, grab your coffee. We're going to talk to our next guest. And after he goes, we're going to go disparate. So I'm bringing in Evan Falchuk right now.
Can't wait.
And here he is. Today, we are very interested in hearing from Evan Falchuk. He's the founder of the United Independent Party, and he ran for governor of Massachusetts on that ticket. Then he did something very unusual. He left the party he founded, and he registered as a Democrat. Today, he speaks out about the dangers of third parties, why they're doomed to fail, and the better solution. Thank you so much for joining us, Evan Falchuk.
Hey, Evan.
Hey guys.
How are you? We're so glad to
Good.
have you here.
I'm glad to be here.
I was just telling Pam, you did the opposite of what most folks who have third-party involvement do. Usually you see people run either as a Democrat or Republican, not win, and then blame the party structure, and then run third party. We saw it with Andrew Yang, who ran for president. And we may be looking at this now with Joe Manchin, who is possibly going to run for president on the no labels ticket. And we'll talk more about that. But what happened to you? Why did you register as a Democrat? Why did you go through all that? Because that was a lot of work. Yeah.
No, it's a good point that a lot of people run for things and then they can blame somebody else for why.
They blame, right. Exactly.
But
you didn't.
You know, I'm a business person and an entrepreneur, and I love kind of creating things from nothing that I think ought to exist. And that was what I wanted to do in building a third party, was saying, you know, everybody says they want it, let's create it and see what happens. And it turns out that you can get enough support to create one, but you cannot get enough support to maintain one. The way the rules work, and this isn't blaming anybody, just the way the rules work, you need a large number of voters to join a party in order to make it into a viable political party under the laws. And people just don't want to join. Voters will tell you, I want there to be independent candidates, and I want to be independent myself. And if you say, well, for there to be independent candidates, you need to join this organization that will make that possible, they don't want to do that. So it doesn't work. So, you know, for me, we live in a time where, from my perspective, you sort of have to pick, because the way the power structure works, you've got to be either a Democrat or a Republican. And I chose to be a Democrat, not because I agree with everything the Democratic Party is doing, far from it, but because when it comes to a lot of the issues that I think are fundamentally important, you know, Democrats are on the right side. But you know what we need more than anything is just people to participate and be involved. I think there's a lot of cynicism that drives people to say the only solution is to be in a third party. And a lot of people out there who say, hey, I can get myself some fame and maybe some power by being an independent candidate. But let's just get more people involved to vote for the person, not for the party that they're from, and to hopefully find candidates who want to represent people, and not things that we don't understand. So yeah, that's what happened to me, Mara.
And I was really interested in this topic because I am from New Hampshire, so I was not familiar with who you are. And then Mara filled me in and I was like, wow, this is really interesting. So you founded the United Independent Party, and I know you worked super hard at it for like 5 years. How was it different than the Democratic Party? Like, was it structurally different? Ideas were different?
Yeah, it was based on the idea. Now this goes back to a different era in American politics because I started this in 2013, really kind of tail end of 2012. And the idea behind it was, what if you could build a political party that said, okay, everyone is equal and everybody's rights need to be protected. And I think the government should spend money wisely. Like, what if you could create something like that? Sounds crazy, but why not? And that was what we set out to build. And what, I ran on that platform on the idea that, yes, I wanted to win the election, but I wanted to get enough votes, because in Massachusetts, under the law, if you get 3% of the vote in a statewide election, the organization on whose platform you're running can become an official political party. So I got more than 3% of the vote in 2014, and that created the United Independent Party as an official political party in Massachusetts. So then after that, we spent time, getting people to run for everything from local offices to legislative races. It's a process to organize people. Like I said before, I think the challenge is that voters overwhelmingly vote for one party or the other. Doesn't matter which one. They identify with one party or another for the most part, and they don't necessarily want to join another thing. They would rather just be independent of all of it. And that was the big challenge. But the core message of, what I just said, everyone's equal and don't waste my money, is, to me, is just, for me, that's common sense. Unfortunately, in politics, it's not necessarily how people vote. And it's one of the dividing lines we see in our country.
What was the reaction, Evan, when you registered as a Democrat? Because I remember you wrote about it in Commonwealth magazine.
Yeah,
so you were quite vocal about it. You did not quietly become a Democrat.
No, well, I'll say two things about it. One of them is that what fascinated me is that there was news coverage around it, not because oh, how cool, there's news coverage, but when I was a candidate and I talked about all kinds of different issues in ways that were interesting and I think provocative, like about the monopolistic consolidation of hospitals, how that's what's driving up healthcare costs, and that we can do things about that are more market friendly and would reduce costs for people. That wasn't that interesting. But if a person joins a different political party, and I'm one guy, that's news. That to me is just interesting, because it's always about the horse race. It's always about who's up, who's down, as opposed to what's the stakes of one side or the other winning. So I found that to be I don't know, not cool. And then I think the other thing was that at the time when I did that, which is 2017, my view is that the things that were happening with the with Trump and many of the things that were being pursued just didn't reflect my values as an American. And I said I wanted to belong to an organization where there was an opportunity to stand for those things. But the bigger thing that really motivated me was seeing that in many of the states, and again, I didn't vote for Trump, but in many of the states that Trump won, there were third-party candidates that represented more votes than the difference between Trump and Clinton. And in that sense, they swung the election. I'm talking about the Green and Libertarian Party candidates, and that's not good. And to me said, okay, what the problem is with third parties? Not only do they not work, but they're dangerous, because they can make elections move in directions that the majority of voters don't want. And you could look at it in so many different directions. I'm not making a political statement around it. Like George W. Bush won Florida because of the Green Party candidate that was there. Okay, you might like that outcome, but the point is that it's skewing an election result because those people can't win. So I said, I don't want any part of that. We got to do some political reform, but we can't be swinging elections.
Evan, I read in 2014 when you ran for the governor's race, and you got a pretty significant amount of votes. There was like some press that you might have been a spoiler in the race, and therefore, the governorship was won by Charlie Baker. And it made me think of 1992 when Ross Perot ran, and that was the Clinton, Ross Perot, and George H.W. Bush, I believe. Yeah, it would have been second, right? And I obviously supported George Bush and was really disappointed when he lost. But I agree, because Ross Perot was this spoiler. So I definitely see where you're coming from in regards to that. I really find the word dangerous to be really, really interesting. Like, I want to dig in on that because I don't see it as being dangerous, but can you just define it so I know what you're talking about?
So if we want elections to represent the will of majority of voters, okay, which is to me what it ought to be, if you have one or more candidates running who make it impossible for the majority of voters' preferences to be reflected in the outcome, that's a problem for democracy. It erodes trust in the system. It makes people feel embittered by the outcome because you say, geez, someone won. I mean, take the 92 race. No one got a majority of the vote. I think I remember Clinton being somewhere in like the 40s and winning. And again, you might like the outcome of that election, but it's not reflective of the majority of voters. Or if it was, it's only by coincidence. One of the reasons that I became very involved in the effort to bring ranked choice voting to Massachusetts and became the chair of that ballot commission here in Massachusetts in 2020 was because people should vote for whoever they want to vote for. And there shouldn't be any fear that if I vote for Ross Perot versus, Bill Clinton versus George Bush, that the outcome's not going to be the one that reflects the majority of voters. We ought to fix that problem. We ought to fix that problem so that majority can be reflected. And that's why I think that third parties are dangerous in the current system.
Evan, can you explain ranked choice voting to folks who aren't familiar with that and tell us where people are actually using that?
Yeah, it's an interesting system. And what it says is if you've got you've got more than two people running, each voter ranks them in order of their preference. So you get your first choice, your second choice, your third choice. And it becomes an instant runoff. So all three votes are counted. If no one has the majority, the person that came in last has their votes eliminated. But every person who voted for that last place person now has their second choice counted, and we go again. So if you think about a regular runoff election where you've got three people, no one gets the majority, and then you decide to vote again just with the last two, this just happens all at once automatically. So it's a pretty simple way of trying to get the majority of voters understood. So you could take an interesting race like the one in Georgia that happened with Warnock and Herschel Walker, and now I'm forgetting who the third candidate was. But it's likely. I think the third candidate was a libertarian. That had that been an instant runoff race, you might have had Herschel Walker, win. Now, again, you can decide you like that outcome or don't like it, but it might have reflected a majority of the voters in that state. There are places where ranked choice is being used. Like Minnesota has recently passed a number of things around ranked choice voting. Maine has it as a statewide initiative and has run some very interesting races that have come out again in ways that reflected the majority of voters. One part of it that I think is fascinating is that there's a congressman named Jared Golden up in Maine, in a fairly rural district in Maine, where it's tightly contested, very conservative,
yeah.
And he is a Democrat, and he's won there. And I think that the ability of a Democrat to win in a conservative district tells you something good about the way the system is working, not because a Democrat was elected, but because you had a candidate that was willing to go out there and convince people to vote for him based on who he is and what he represents, not based on the letter next to his name on the ballot. And that's healthy democracy. And I'm telling you, I'd say the same thing if a Republican won in a Democratic district, 100%. Like imagine if I'm sitting in Cambridge in a WeWork, if a Republican could win in a place like Cambridge because that person was able to convince voters that he or she represented what they wanted, that would be so good. And that's what I want to see more of.
Well, this is particularly relevant right now because there's an organization called No Labels which is funded by right-wing folks. Harlan Crow, the guy, the billionaire who's been treating Clarence Thomas to trips on private jets and luxury vacations and buying his mother's home and maintaining the property, is one of the funders. So we know what their real agenda is. There is discussion that Joe Manchin would run for president under the no labels ticket. And what folks need to know is that in 2020, Joe Biden actually got fewer votes in the blue wall states, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania, that he did in 2016, but he still won because there was no third party candidate. So Evan Falchuk, what would you say to folks about no labels? Because it scares me. It's the only thing that worries me about 2020.
Yeah. Well, putting aside what we want what anybody might want the outcome of the race to be, if an organization like No Labels is out there putting someone on the ballot in a way that makes it hard for the majority will of voters to be represented, it's a very bad idea. We need to have elections where the majority wins. And when we don't have that, bad things end up happening, independent of what the outcome is.
Because with ranked choice voting, a voter could say, I really like the no labels candidate best, but if they don't get through, then my second choice is Trump or my second choice is Biden. And that being counted would be better for democracy.
I think it would be amazing. I mean, it would give you as a voter, as anybody in politics, an incredible amount of data about what do voters really want. So you could pick a state, like imagine in a scenario where you had a Green Party candidate running with the Democrat and the Republican, and maybe and it's a Midwestern state, and the Green Party candidate does really well, but doesn't finish as the majority winner, and it's like Trump gets to be the majority winner. Well, you're now seeing something really interesting, which is that people wanted a combination of what, say, Trump represents and what Jill Stein represents, just as an example. Mm-hmm. And there are voters like that out there. Maybe there's more than we think. But the point is, the elections ought to tell us that. So yeah, if No Labels wants to do that, it's almost polluting the data that we can get out of an election, and in that sense, doing something very dangerous to our democracy.
I've never heard of No Labels. I don't like.
They were one of these wonderful ideas that came out of the 1990s, where it was kind of a can't we all just get along style of politics. And so their view was a little bit like the way the EU was created, by having tied people together with little things in the hopes that it creates bigger things. So they were very into things like procurement reform, like getting government agencies to work together and buy things for less money, which is all wonderful. But of course, in a world that, like, the house is on fire, making sure the Pentagon spends less money on pencils is, not exactly a burning issue for most voters. But that's what they were trying to do. And I guess over time, they've decided their business model needs to shift and do things like what we're talking about.
Yeah, I very respectfully to both of you, I just feel that if someone wants to run, they should be able to run. If they want to form a party, they should be able to form a party. People should just.
I agree.
No matter what.
I would.
Yeah. Go ahead, Evan.
No, I'd just say to someone that did it, far be it for me to say don't. I think everybody should run. It's just now a question of, when we think about it from a public policy standpoint, what do we think is good public policy? So for instance, if you want to be a smoker, go smoke, enjoy yourself, but from a public policy perspective, we ought to limit the extent to which people smoke.
Yeah, I don't want them to smoke next to me. That's the thing.
Yeah. And so it's just, I think policy questions like this are really, really hard. And, but my view is we need to think about it from that public policy perspective, as opposed to what an individual can or cannot do, because they should run.
I just think that voters need to know that if they vote for a third party candidate, it's not going to get them what they want, or what they think they want, which is why if we had ranked choice voting, they could vote for that third party candidate.
But it's their choice to do so, whether we agree with it or not. I was not a fan, it was someone's choice. Like if someone wanted to vote for Evan in 2014 for governor, it was their choice. I mean, I don't think we should just dictate what other people should do. Like they should do whatever you want to do. I totally get your point that it could have ramifications on public policy and majority.
That's what it is.
I got it. But
That's what it is. Just want to educate the voters so they know what they're dealing with. And I do think it's important for folks to know who's funding No Labels, lest they have any illusions about what their true motives are. I don't think they're like a moderating force. I think their agenda is to elect Trump.
I feel like, I mean, I'm pretty keyed into Republican politics and I've never heard of this before. So I'm just curious if like the average person on the street, if I were to like walk out of my office and stop someone and say, do you know what No Labels is? I think I would say no. I'm just so unaware.
Well, they haven't announced a candidate for president yet. I mean, it certainly looks like they will. They've certainly got the money to do it. They're looking at Joe Manchin. I mean, the talk on the street is that he can't get reelected in West Virginia, so he has nowhere else to go. So he's going to be the kind of candidate I was talking about at the beginning of the show, the person who can't win in one of the major parties and so goes to a third party.
Gotcha.
But Pam, I think that your point is really important, which is that I agree with you. I bet you a tiny number of voters know what No Labels is, and it's going to be people that are politically, engaged, aware, in a way that most voters aren't. And so what will end up happening is that you get closer to the election, people will pay attention, and you see, oh, it's Joe Manchin and Joe Biden, and I like Joe Manchin, better than I like Joe Biden, and I'm not going to vote for Trump. And so it has that kind of an impact. Look, politics is complex stuff, and in many ways it's big business. And so there's a lot at stake, for trying to get to win elections, and people are going to spend money in the way that they want to, especially in the way our system is currently set up. But yeah, look, Massachusetts, there's so many races that are unopposed, like especially in the legislature, where there's a Democrat who's been there for 35 years and they're never getting out. I mean, Mara's seen a race like that.
I ran against a long-term incumbent. I'm running again next year against a Democrat who's been in for 25 years. And last year, this was something called the Governor's Council. And when I ran last year, I was the only primary challenge for a governor's counselor.
It's a real problem.
And nobody wanted to challenge them.
So to me, like my point on that is, it takes guts to go and do what you're doing, Mara. And I think that all these races where there's no one running is very bad for democracy. And unfortunately, because of the fact that the way the system works is that there are either Democrats or there are Republicans. In Massachusetts, the Republican Party is not matching up with enough voters to want to vote for those candidates. So we do not have contested elections. So it's just not good. It's not good for democracy when that happens.
I agree with that. I mean, I'm sure, Pam, you do as well. Primaries are good.
Yeah, fantastic. And as Republicans, I always feel like primary each other way more than Democrats primary each other.
That's interesting.
Why do you think that is?
You know what? I think because as a Republican, kind of on just what I was saying before, like I always think it's someone's choice to do whatever they want. Like, you want to do this, do that. And I think as Republicans, we sort of have this, I'm going to say what I want to say. I'm going to put forward what I want to put forward. It's my choice to do this. And I do feel like the Democrats have this great system in place, frankly, where they don't primary each other. And I get your point where it's not great, but my perspective is when in a primary, the Republican candidates are tearing each other apart and spending hundreds of thousands of dollars doing it, then once whoever wins the primary is now limping towards the general election with the lack of money, right? And now there's some negative stuff out there, and I love it and I hate it. Yeah, there's good things.
It's such an interesting point, because it's almost like what you're describing is, okay, what does it take to win an election, right? And the Democrats, as you're pointing out, have done a nice job of making sure in Massachusetts that the elections get won because it's working. But I think from the standpoint of it, just as a regular old voter, I just want to see choices. I want to see competition. It's America. We ought to have choices, how many flavors? I just saw the commercials, like Sonic is saying they've got like 63 flavors of sodas you can get at Sonic. And then you go to your ballot and there's just one dude who's been there for 25 years. Like that's not America. You need more.
Yeah. What are the prospects for ranked choice voting? I know in my own town of Concord, Massachusetts, we did vote at our town meeting to adopt ranked choice voting for our municipal elections. Are people going to do this elsewhere?
There's moves in a lot of states to do things. The organization that led the ballot initiative here in Massachusetts has continued, and they're organizing in cities and towns across Massachusetts to do this because it's Massachusetts and that's the way we organize things. My comment on it, without saying anything bad about the people running this, is that ranked choice voting was during the campaign in 2020 positioned by opponents as being this progressive reform designed to get more lefty candidates elected. And unfortunately, the strategy that the organization is pursuing is to go to towns. No offense to Concord, but that's not a conservative bastion. And Cambridge, which already has it, and out in Western Mass, like East Hampton and Northampton, and these kinds of places, and getting it put in place there, which to me is a mistake. Like I would rather you go down to Cape Cod, go to Quincy, go to Taunton, go to other much more interestingly politically mixed communities and get it in place in these places and convince voters at large that this is a good idea for them. As
That's
opposed
a great
to
point, but is it easier to persuade Democrats to support ranked choice voting than it is to persuade Republicans?
Maybe.
What do you think?
I think she was asking you, Pam. Sorry, because I jumped in.
Yeah. Do you think it's easy? I was asking Evan if he thinks it's easier to persuade Democrats to support ranked choice voting than Republicans. I'm wondering what your take on it is.
My experience has been Georgia. When you started talking about it, I know that you just mentioned Georgia. Like I keep thinking of Georgia, maybe even Louisiana. I'm not positive, but some of those like real southern states. And I know when I watch the totals coming in and then Georgia has to go to a runoff, I get really frustrated. So I don't think I know enough about it right now, really. But I don't know if I would lean towards it. I don't know.
Okay, fair enough. So Evan, we like to close out our interviews with a lightning round. And just 3 quick, easy questions, but I'll tell you, sometimes guests say the most important things in responses to these questions. So I'm going to start with the first one. What was a book that changed your life?
Well, the first book that came to mind is Moby Dick, which I had to read that in 8th grade, believe it or not, which is a really heavy thing to give to anybody. And I just found it to be, I don't know, there was something about it that just swept me up in the story. I mean, all the chapters about whaling are not that interesting, but the story kind of swept me up because it's this notion of, pursuing and what the obsessive fight against evil in somebody consuming them. And I don't know, I just found that to be a fascinating story and definitely has always affected me since.
Okay, second question. Who is your favorite politician of all time, living or dead? Like, who would you like to meet?
I'd love to meet Abraham Lincoln. Dude saved America, and he had an incredible sense of right and wrong, and stood up for what he believed in.
Yeah, my husband and I always have this debate when we talk about like who are our favorite presidents, and he always says Abraham Lincoln, and I'm like, yeah, but George Washington. I feel like it's a tie between the two of them, but I recognize both of their different significances, and I think they're
both good choices.
Yeah, but we always talk about that, and it's always, my husband's always like, nope, Abraham Lincoln, and I'm like, nope, George Washington.
Well, each of you get to pick one, so then you'll have both.
There you go. And last, what's your favorite vacation spot?
Boy. We have a house, my wife and I, down in Provincetown on the Cape, and it's an awesome place. It's fun. It's a ferry ride away, and it's just a happy place. So yeah, that's my favorite vacation spot.
This is going to blow your mind. We just had New Hampshire Dems chair Ray Buckley on, and we asked him about his most influential politician, the one he'd want to meet. He said Abraham Lincoln. And when we asked him his favorite vacation spot, he said Provincetown.
You either have really good, smart guests or just people that like Abraham Lincoln and Provincetown.
No, I think it's the former, but that is an absolutely amazing coincidence. And this has been an amazing conversation. Thank you so much for joining us, Evan. We hope that you'll come back as the race for president heats up. I do expect No Labels to run a candidate, and we'd love your thoughts. So thank you so much for joining us.
Fantastic. And also just to you guys, just putting together two different ends of the political spectrum together on a show and being able to talk politics as normal human beings is awesome. So congratulations and thank you for doing it.
Thank you so much. Take care, Evan.
All right. Take care, guys.
All right, Pam, it's time to go to Disparate.
Yes, we're going disparate. Yeah, I mean, I think, and I said this to him, and I said this to both of you, when you use the term dangerous, like it just doesn't sit right with me. I hate it. It feels so limiting. It feels so restrictive. It feels regulatory. Like, oh, can't do that. Too dangerous. Like, again, I believe in this democratic republic that we live in that is so special that if we want to have 17 parties run, let 17 parties run. Who cares if the majority doesn't win? That is our process. Like, I don't see that, like, I just don't like that dangerous term. I just believe that people have the freedom to do whatever the hell they want.
I totally hear what you're saying. I just want to be careful that voters understand what their vote for a third party really means.
Well, what if they don't, Mara? Like, who cares?
I care. I want them to be informed about the consequences of their vote.
But what if your neighbor doesn't care? What if your neighbor's like, I'm voting for No Labels, whoever the hell that is, I'm going to vote for it. Like, is it really up to anyone to educate your neighbor? Like, your neighbor is free choice. They can choose whoever they want.
But they think they should make an educated choice. So,
but they don't have to, right? I mean,
well, I would think voters would want to know if their vote was, like if they're voting for a candidate who can't possibly win, and there might be another candidate on the ballot. So the hypothetical is someone who absolutely does not want Trump to win needs to know that if they vote for No Labels, that's a vote for Trump. Voters need to know that. That's what's dangerous.
well, like, put it out in a commercial, right? Like, that's why we have all these political commercials. That's why people write op-eds. That's why we have all these magazines, right? That's why people go to the internet for all their news, right? There's all these different sources that you can put information out there. But at the end of the day, the individual who's voting has the right to say, I don't give a damn. I'm not listening. I'm not lifting a one finger to read any literature or any campaign commercials. I'm just going on my own gut.
That's very New Hampshire. And I'm like from Massachusetts, which is the Athens of America. We're the best educated state in the country. We're all about education. So the Massachusetts perspective would never be, oh, well, if they don't know what they're doing, it's their right not to know what they're doing. Maybe it is, but we want to make sure that they have enough opportunities so that they can find out. Now, I know you have deep party loyalty. I don't think you would ever run for or vote for a third party candidate.
You know, I probably would not. I mean, I would never run for office ever again. Would I vote for a third party candidate? I mean, I highly doubt it, but like, I don't know. Maybe I'd be open-minded, but I doubt it.
Yeah. No, I wouldn't. I would, because I think it's really, in this country, under the current political system, either the Democrat's going to win or the Republican's going to win. And I want the Democrat to win, so I'm going to vote for the Democrat. And I used to say I would never run for office again, but then I did. So you never know, Pam.
I know, but you're going to win this next time because you did amazing last time. So you're going to win this time.
You're so nice. If folks want more information, you can go to maradolan.com and we'll be talking more about that because frankly, I'm running at this point. And I'll be talking about the campaign, and I'd love folks to follow, and because it's governor's council, and they are the people in Massachusetts who decide who our judges are going to be. And that's incredibly important, as Pam and I both know, as attorneys who are in our court system every day. It's a really big deal who the judge is.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So we want to thank everyone for listening today. You can go to our website, goingdisparate.com. You can sign up for our newsletter. You can click on the link to our podcast, and you can find us on all the socials. Mara, do you want to list them?
Facebook, Insta, Twitter, and also we would love to hear from you. What do you think? Email us at pamandmara@gmail.com.
Absolutely. And Mara, it was a good one. It was good going Disparate. I love it.
Always a pleasure to go to Disparate. And if you want to continue to go to Disparate, you can find us on all platforms. So many I have to read from a list: Spotify, iTunes, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Castbox, Stitcher, and you can watch us on YouTube. Please subscribe and leave us a 5-star review so that other people can find our podcast too. And as we go, remember, your adversary can turn out to be one of your best friends. We'll see you next time.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for listening.
Bye.